ISILILO, that's a show about the Life Esidimeni tragedy, will launch today at the Market Theatre Lab as part of their human rights program. It looks into the state of health institutions through the life of a young boy whose dreams are deferred because of his father's deteriorating health. The play debuted back in 2020 actually, but was only open to the media and the affected families. A total of 144 mentally ill patients, you might remember, died after they were moved from Life Esidimeni facilities to ill-equipped NGOs back in 2016. Let's bring you some of the creators of this play now. Siyambonga Mdubeki is one of the directors, as well as Baleni Ernest, who both are in studio for us this morning. And it's lovely to see you, gentlemen. Thanks for making the journey to our studios.
Thank you so much.
This play, as I mentioned, has been on before, and we'll talk about the reaction in just a moment, but it's being described as a mix of comedy, absurdism, and physical theatre. Siyambonga, let me start with you.
Yes.
Hard to believe that there's anything humorous you might find about a story like this.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that. But I mean, like, as theatre makers, our role was to kind of find something light, because we know that the Life Esidimeni story is very sad. But how do we then kind of bring it home, make it like a very light story, bring satire into it so that people can relate more? Because I believe that we as South Africans generally, humor is our thing. It helps us through the pain.
And we certainly laugh through the most tragic of moments. But again, you know, people, it almost feels draw the line at some stage. Baleni, how did you go about doing that? Because there's a real risk, of course, in a story like this of coming across irreverent, disrespectful of the families who, without a doubt, are still trying to make sense of how something like this could have happened.
Yeah, I think for me and the team, it was making sure that we treat the story with the sensitiveness that it needs. So every time when exploring scenes and when we're trying to make up sections in the work, we'll make sure that we give the story the sensitiveness that it needs. So we're being sensitive the entire time.
Fair enough. I mean, I gave it a shot when I tried to describe what the story is about. Let me hear it from you. I mean, how are you taking the story, which has run for several years, quite frankly, some people might say it's still ongoing today, into a play that's a couple minutes long that doesn't take away from the key moments of the story?
Yeah. So, because what I had figured out with the team as well was that the headlines are out there, and I mean, but we never get to hear about the actual people that were affected. So that's why we made it so personal. So we follow a story of this boy who's got dreams, who's got a love life going on, and who's got to choose, like, who's got to also take care of his father. But then is affected by this whole thing that happened with the Life Esidimeni. So we've made it very personal to see how that whole big thing kind of affected like lives of the people that are on the ground. So it's basically from that saying that goes, when the elephant fights, it's the grass that suffers the most. And so with the decisions that were made up there, a lot of people were affected on the ground. Without a doubt.
And there are names behind those numbers, right? We often speak about 144 patients. But let me stay with you, Siyambonga. I mean, what was it for you that made you think about writing a play like this? I'm sure that must have come from a personal experience too.
Well, I was disturbed by one particular headline that said at least 144 people died. So for me, that term "at least" kind of disturbed me, because I was like, how do you say "at least" when there's such a huge number of people that died? And from then I just developed an interest, and I started researching, meeting journalists, and then that led me to meeting the families that were affected. And from then I was like, what could be my voice? Because I think as a theatre maker, I think maybe I would also have to play a role. So then from then I started writing, and then I called the team to come in, and I shared the idea with them. And it turned out that even with the team, they also kind of experienced what happened at Life Esidimeni. But it's just that, because I think Life Esidimeni incident has been happening, but it's just that it was always like maybe 2 or 3 people dying. And now, because it was such a huge number, that's why it was in the limelight. So for me, I was just, as a human being, affected by what is happening. And also knowing that in South Africa now, it has become a norm that a story is a headline today, but 2 days down the line, we focus on something else. But nothing is ever done. No one ever takes accountability. No one is ever held criminally liable for what they do.
Yeah, and this is potentially a case in point. I mean, Baleni, any performer, any artist will tell you that it's one thing being able to act even on stage or on screen. It's another trying to recreate real-life moments when the people who are affected are still alive and can come watch the play. How was that experience for you? Because I understand some of the families that were affected by this have also seen it.
Yeah, I think what helped me a lot, it was listening to the interviews that Siyambonga did with one of the family members. So every time during rehearsals, we'll revisit those interviews, listening to them, hearing what they say. So that in terms of creation, it really helped me and the team a lot in terms of making sure that they feel represented in a rightful manner. So that when we put up the play, they don't feel as if we didn't represent them. So we have made sure with the team, taking back from those interviews, listening to the stories that happened during that time. So we have made sure that we really take care of their feelings, how they are feeling. And then we have managed to staging. And then, yeah, the sensitiveness that we had during the creation, it was amazing. So I would say that I feel that we have represented them in a rightful way.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the artistic decisions that have been made. Absurdism is an interesting choice, right? Because you'd expect this to take on a more realist kind of dimension, because it's real, for one. You know, it happened in history. But Baleni, I mean, what was the thinking behind making this a play that's infused with a bit of absurdism?
I think, like Siyambonga said, more especially in South Africa, we hide behind jokes. Sometimes, but I can say to you, laughing about it. But to be honest, so making a theater, we as black people, we intend to hide with laughing. So in terms of the approach, we're like, okay, this thing is serious, and we don't want people to feel heavy while they're watching it. So how about we infuse other element of which it's absurdism within the work? So that was the clear choice of it. We don't want people to feel heavy while watching the show. We want people to enjoy the show while getting the message behind the story. And
that's always the thing, Siyambonga, right? If people feel like it's too much, they disconnect.
They disconnect. I think also, just to add on what Ernest is saying about the absurdism, I think because if you really look at it, what really happened with the Life Esidimeni was very absurd.
Yes.
Like, it's inhumane. So for us, it was also to go, because you realize that it's sad, because also the people that were making these decisions and the people that were supposed to take care of these people are us. So when I say us, it's black people. Normally, we kind of become comfortable when it's a racial thing. But this was not even a racial thing. It was black people not taking care of black people. So it was very upset. It was very sad. So when we're exploring those elements for us as well, it was a thing of having to look at, because sometimes you realize that a lot of black people find themselves in spaces where, or in health cares that are not really supported or that are institutionalized, and making them turn into these inhumane people. And you realize that if you spend your time in spaces like that, that are very, that are like that, your outlet to people is very harsh. You always trying to regain your humanity. But because you always wonder, how are these people behaving like this? And I'm now talking about the people that are supposed to be taking care of these people. So it's very upset.
Sure.
It was very upset.
Does the play ever explore, since we're speaking about, black people in relation to each other, explore how many communities still struggle with the idea of mental health? Sometimes there are families, out of their best intentions, that don't know how to deal with someone in their family who's got a mental illness. And that's how Life Esidimeni in some instances perhaps may have happened. People who say, I need the help. You send them to an institution, and sadly, as you mentioned, those very people end up dropping the ball, and that's putting it lightly.
Yeah. Well, it does happen in the play. Like, for instance, we've got characters like the boy, what he's going through, like his father is sick. But the way he's so ashamed to let people know that his father is going through this. Even when the father is going through episodes and there's people who are hearing all this noise happening in the yard and asking what is happening, the boy rather says, no, I'm fine, we were just playing, we were just singing. Because he knows if he ever lets this whole thing out, how the society is probably going to behave. And it even shows again when he decides to take the father to an institution and meeting the people that don't really care, like who are taking him up and down and shaming him for even coming here and using like very words about like, because as a society we've developed these terms where we say Whereas I think there is safer words to use when we're referring to such people, which is why I think it's also a perfect time that we bring this play during human rights, because we believe that their rights as human beings, they were violated.
So many lessons to be learned, and part of what the objective of art is meant to do is to reflect ourselves to ourselves. So hopefully we'll be able to get that as we engage with the play. Thanks for coming through and speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Siyambonga Mdubeki, I beg your pardon, as well as Ernest Baleni. Once again, thanks very much for coming through.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.